Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me tonight, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones, and our director of basketball recruiting and a basketball analyst, David Sisk. Guys, I appreciate you joining me tonight. We've got an exciting preview series we're starting today. We're starting today with Garrison Brooks in our THI season preview for the UNC basketball team. Garrison Brooks, a guy that really came on last year, 16.8 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game, ACC's most improved player, and was voted second team All-ACC. AJ, we're going to start with you. You obviously, we covered, every Carolina basketball game last year. You especially have seen the growth that Garrison Brooks has taken not only on the court, but off the court since he arrived in Chapel Hill as a freshman. But AJ, it was quite the year for Garrison Brooks last year, and expectations are getting even higher for him this season.
And it was quite the second half of the year when you really think about it. And it was the Georgia Tech game that they lost at home, the early January, and Garrison went for 35 and 11 or something like that. And they lost. And I remember when he came out of the game, he got this huge ovation. And I just looked at it and said, wow, Garrison Brooks just turned in a Hansbrough-esque kind of performance, a Jamison-esque kind of performance. And it was really eye-opening. And what's amazing is he did it again. And then he did lots of performances that were close to that. He averaged almost 20 points a game over his last 18 games. He missed one of Carolina's last 19, a game at Louisville. But he averaged almost 20 points a game. He had, 12 double-doubles last season. He had 13 double-figure rebound games. He wasn't just scoring. I asked Roy Williams late in the season what it was about Garrison's game that evolved during the course of the year. And he said it wasn't really his game. It was that he learned to trust what he could do. And I think being forced with Cole out to just say, guys, someone's got to score in this possession. Someone's got to take the ball, pound it on the floor, turn and score, kind of gave him, sort of sped up that confidence thing because the ball went in the basket. And he ended up playing very, very well. Second team All-ACC, most improved player in the league. And now he's ACC preseason player of the year, which is pretty amazing. He was the number 123 prospect in his class. And he's now the ACC preseason player of the year. That's a testament to how hard this kid works. And nobody understands how hard he works more than the people that are in that program, and they rave about his work ethic.
Absolutely. Garrison is a guy that, like I said, he's just jumped leaps and bounds. Freshman year, averaged 4.5 points per game, 7.9 his sophomore year, and he basically more than doubled that last year, like I mentioned earlier, with 16.8 points per game. So a really, really big year for Garrison Brooks last year. David, anything you obviously weren't there covering it in person with us, but anything you want to add? Because I know you were obviously watching Carolina from afar, following Carolina from afar, and I'm sure you had to be impressed with what Garrison was doing.
Yeah, and I saw Garrison a lot in high school and AAU. I live, 20 miles from the Alabama line. So I see a lot of going into Alabama, especially at that time working for Vanderbilt. They were recruiting all those guys out of the Birmingham area. So I got to see a lot of them. And, Garrison was probably considered maybe not as good as even the Wiley kid that's at Auburn, who is right around the same age. If I'm not mistaken, they were the same class. They looked a lot alike, big physical kids, but, just what Garrison Brooks has been able to do. And I think he speaks for what Roy Williams wants to do with his program. And Andrew likes to quote something that a college coach told me last year, and that is, you've got to find a way for your team to get old. And I think you look at Garrison Brooks really as the poster child for really what Roy Williams stands for with the program, what he wants his players to be and his program to be. And it's not necessarily a one-and-done guy. I have a lot of North Carolina fans sending me DMs and things like that. And they get concerned about recruits, and if Duke gets somebody a one and done, and why can't we get them? And I've always said it's different. If you have a top 10 kid and Roy doesn't get him, that doesn't necessarily mean the sky's falling, because North Carolina has not been a one and done program, and Roy doesn't want it to be a North Carolina program. He's entrenched there as more or as much or more than anybody in history. He spent almost his entire life in Chapel Hill. So just to see Garrison improve year by year by year. And, like you say, a player who, as a freshman, averaged 4.5 points and 3.5 rebounds. And now as a senior, as Andrew said, preseason ACC Player of the Year. I think that, like Andrew said, that speaks for his hard work, his maturity, his growth, but it also speaks for really what the North Carolina program is.
Let me throw something in there, too, that I think is a little bit – hopefully during the course of this season will be something that is more documented than it has been so far. But Garrison played a lot his first 2 years. I mean, he started second year. He started a lot his first year, logged a lot of minutes on the floor. He wasn't highly skilled when he got to Carolina, and the skills he did have, they didn't rely on. They didn't lean on him. What he was when he arrived was extremely sound fundamentally. Did so many things well. He was reliable. Roy could put him out there and trust him. So some kids get to school, and David could speak to this. Coaches have got to teach them how to set a screen. They got to teach them how to come off a screen. They got to teach them how to fight through a screen defensively. They got to teach them all these things that a lot of people watching the game take for granted. Garrison already knew how to do those things. So he began the process of getting really good and learning from guys like Luke May and seeing his work ethic and seeing how his game changed and watching what Cam Johnson, when he came in and turned himself in from an average player at Pitt or maybe a slightly above average player at Pitt to a first-round draft pick who's going to play in the league for a long time. So Garrison is a really smart guy, and he had a lot of great examples around him. And he has used the resources of being at UNC as well as any player I've covered in a long time at Carolina. And we're going to see that continue here in his senior year.
Yeah, that was a perfect segue, AJ. I got separate questions for you guys, AJ. I'm going to start with you, though, real quick. How big is he for this team? Obviously, he was huge for last year's team. Obviously, it wasn't a great year for Carolina. They really, really relied on him. I think he was Carolina's most consistent player last year by far. But when you look at the six freshmen coming in, there's a lot of big man talent down there. Carolina's also got some veterans coming back as well. Do you see his role changing at all? Do you think he's going to be relied on pretty heavily like he was last year?
Preseason ACC Player of the Year, gonna have a big role.
Yeah,
ball's got to touch his hands, not just because he can score. I'm not sure he's going to score as much as he did a year ago, but he knows what to do with it when he touches the ball. He sees the floor. He knows where the other four are, knows where they're supposed to be. He knows how to play off of guys. His presence on the floor will make Armando better as a sophomore. It'll make the two freshmen, Daron Sharp and Walker Kessler, better. His presence on the floor will be a little bit calming for the freshmen in the backcourt, R.J. Davis and Caleb Love. He's going to serve a value that extends well beyond whatever his statistical production is. And I hope fans don't just solely judge him based on what his numbers were a year ago versus this year. It's a totally different team. This is a team that's going to live a very different life on the court this season than last year's did. All respect to Justin Pierce, who busted his butt last year, but he's not going to be the other big down there a lot of times with Garrison. It's going to be a different world. Plus, Garrison's going to extend his game. Spent all off season launching threes. And by the way, when I shoot those videos and stuff, you're there on the court a lot of times at home games and stuff, some road games, Jacob. I'm there watching them warm up. I'm taking in the routines and all that kind of stuff. And part of Garrison's routine a year ago was hitting threes, and he had his foot right on the out-of-bounds line, right in front of the bench right there, and he was stroking it. It was a fluid shot. The next thing for him was to be able to do it with a hand in his face, and he spent all off season doing that. So you're going to see more of that in his game too, which will do what? It'll open it up for the young kids down low. I think his impact on this team is going to go well beyond the statistics, and it's going to be significant.
Anything you want to add to that, David?
Yeah, I think when you're a senior, you've got all these freshmen coming in, and even red shirts. You run into the college season. They've not experienced it before. The grind, playing through Christmas. And, with COVID this year, there's just more hoops you're going to jump through. There's so many unknowns and variables. But there are going to be times when and Andrew could speak more than I can on how hard Roy Williams coaches them. But there's going to be times that each freshman's in a doghouse. And I've always told high school seniors when they graduate going to play sports, and they even told my daughter this when she went in, and she didn't play sports, but when she went to college, I said, look, there's going to be a place somewhere your freshman year where you hit a wall and you say, I can't do this, I want to go home, whether you play athlete or not. And I think both of you can testify to that. And it's even more so when you play sports and you've got the fan base down on you and you're in a slump and you're struggling, or maybe you lose some tough games and you're coming back from wherever during a week game, let's say from Tallahassee or wherever, and you get home at 2 a.m. and you've got an 8 a.m. class and you've got to get up, and they're going to hit that. So I think not only on the court do they look to him, he's going to be a guy that they look to where when he's going to be the coach in the locker room, where he can come to them and say, look, I went through this, and that advice will be invaluable. It'll help some young freshmen get through a year and go through that wall.
Mm-hmm. When on Late Night with Roy, Garrison's freshman year, a banner was unveiled. So he walked into a program that was the defending national champion. As a junior, they went 14-19, the second worst year in program history. And they had a rash of injuries. He missed one game. He pretty much stayed healthy throughout the year. He was sick that day in Louisville, and they left him at the hotel. He became the face of the team last year, the face of the program. Yep. And that team fought. They lost 6 games essentially at the buzzer. And they kept losing, and they were playing with the weight of the world. That name on the jersey could be a real asset, but it can also weigh against you when you're going through the kind of season they were last year. But the constant was Garrison. And it speaks to what you're saying, David. He's gone. Look at the roller coaster of the environment that he's been in at Carolina as far as success, what expectations are. And he was able to work through it and come out the other end like Andrew Dufresne, smelling good. And that is going to carry over. That's a value he could teach those kids this year, because you're right. Kessler's going to go through a stretch. Sharp's going to go through a stretch. And even Baycock can teach him something, because he went through a few of them last year. But he'll tell you that Garrison was huge in him pulling through and getting through a lot of that stuff. And Armando played some decent basketball toward the end of the year. So that's, again, the attributes that Garrison brings to this team go way beyond just what you see for 40 minutes on the basketball court.
Last question I have for you guys before we wrap it up. David, I'm going to start with you, and then AJ, feel free to chime in at the end if you'd like to. Garrison Brooks is a guy, like we've mentioned in this podcast, that since he arrived in Chapel Hill, he's gotten better every single year. You can see it in his game. You can see it in his physique. You can look at his stats and see that he's improved every single year that he's been at Carolina. David, you're a guy that obviously covered him in high school, covered his recruiting to now. What do you think are the next steps in his game? Where do you think he can take his game? Where do you think it can go? Because obviously he's already pretty good as it is.
I would like to see more of him. I guess my answer would be I'd like to answer that question 2 months from now, because I want to see him on a team that's good, where, like Andrew said, he may not score as much this year. He may not get as many shots. Hopefully, for North Carolina fans, the situation is going to be where you've got a lot of guys contributing positively, and the offense is more well-rounded and it's more balanced. I want to see how he plays in that type of game when he really probably doesn't have the weight on him, like Andrew said, because when he goes to the NBA, he's not going to be the guy. I mean, we know that. But he could have a very long career. We've talked about him earlier, stepping out, his game out on the floor, being able to make the jump shots with the hands in his face. So if you're talking about player development with him going on to the league, and that's what I kind of look at as they get older here, how does his game really move to where he can go to the NBA and play there for a long time and actually get that second contract, because that's the huge issue, is getting that second contract. And the thing I see in today's game, it's not necessarily playing down there where you're back to the bucket. Can he stretch the floor and knock down some outside shots? Can he switch on to guards and ball screen and handoff action, guard the perimeters? And then how does he play in the screen and roll, the pick and pop, and how does he run the floor? Those are the big things. I think you can take a guy who can put his back to the bucket and he can score at will, and that's great, but that doesn't translate to what they do in the NBA. So I want to see him play this new – can he step out and move his game to that new style where he's just not roughing up players inside?
You go to college to get a job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for Garrison – he wants to play at the next level, whether it's in the NBA or for a while overseas. Either way, he's going to have to shoot the ball from the perimeter. He's going to have to hit 15-footers, 18-footers. He's going to have to hit threes. He's got to be able to catch, turn, and square and let it go quickly. And that's what he spent a lot of the offseason on. It was the primary point of emphasis. I don't think he has to show a whole lot of a handle now. There'll be time for that. If he can shoot the ball as well as he does other things, he'll have time to develop a little bit more of a handle. But David's 100% right. The things he's talking about are the things that if you're going to get inserted into a game, you got to be able to do, because the NBA game is spread out now. Your international game, that was spread out before the NBA game was. And Garrison wanted to come back, and I don't think he probably could have gone, but he wanted to come back and improve those parts of his game to better enhance his chance to make a living doing this for quite some time. And it actually coincided with a time where they have other bigs coming in, so it's not like he's going to have to camp out on the lower block all season long and not have the opportunity to display some of those attributes. He's going to have that chance. And if he is a potential NBA player down the road, he's going to play well in a little bit of a different role this year as far as how he gets his production, and that'll make Carolina a very, very good team. If Garrison Brooks is shooting 35% from three-point range and he's taking a couple of threes a game and he's doing all the other stuff he does, he's going to be really good, and so is Carolina.
Absolutely.
At 6'10", 240, let me say one thing quickly.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
At 6'10", 240, he may look like a five. I mean, he's a true college five, but I don't know that he's a true NBA five. When he gets there and professional, they probably want to slim him down a little bit, because if you're an NBA five, it's all about rim protection. And like I said, these other things, what the pros are going to be looking at is going to be other parts of the game offensively that don't place in the lane. So, and even if he gets, let's say, a 10-day contract, if he gets a two-way, he can go G League and up and play a little bit. They'll work a lot on that. So I think even if he goes there and it takes him 3 years, let's say, really to get to where he can crack an NBA lineup, and he's 25 years old, as big and strong as he is now, they're going to lean him up. His body is going to look like a totally different guy than he does now. He looks good now, but they're going to change it. They're not going to make him bigger and stronger. It'll change.
By the way, part of that process about not being a five is he said a couple weeks ago that he will play four. He will not play five at all this year. You got Sharp and Kessler out there, and even Armando, no need to. He said he will always be a four, and that's good. So
that's a smart. That's a guy right now. That's a guy right there that knows how to market himself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, but Roy does too. The selling point of a guy like him going off, and if he can make it in the NBA or he make a ton of money overseas, Roy can sell that to kids. You don't have to be top 20 to come here to have a life in the sport making some cash. Because there are a lot of places to go to make money in this sport. And a lot of times kids just think you got to be a lottery pick or you're nothing. And that's not the case. And Garrison could be another example of many where you can have a really good life playing the sport without having to be a top 5 pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff, guys.
The college experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff, guys. That's going to do it for the first episode of the THI season preview, focused on Garrison Brooks in this one. But, yeah, I mean, Garrison Brooks is a guy that he's come on so much since he got here, and I'm really excited to see what happens this year, because I think he's got some improvement he can do and can get even better. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. We got plenty more coming throughout the week, so you guys come back. As always, guys, be sure to like it. Be sure to share it. We'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.